You wake up as President of the United States, what would you do? Well, the vast majority of classified shit isn't accountable, my man. No one knows where it's at any given time. You wouldn't believe how much of the system relies on people doing their job correctly and being honest. What's so hard about finding classified documents? The president. You would end up very bored. Most things that are classified because of how the information was collected. There are millions of highly classified documents which contain the equivalent of people talking about an entirely normal and utterly unremarkable dinner. Then there are the things which might as well be written in a long dead language unless you happen to have a great deal of knowledge about a very specific area of study. Finally, there are reports, roll-ups, and assessments, most of which answer questions that you'd never care about, and aside from that, you'd find that it'd take more than a week anyhow. Just because you are the president, the person holding the very office that lent its authority to the concept of classification, doesn't mean you can just get the information. Just the first step is harder than you'd think, knowing where to look. Something a lot of people don't realize, government activity, especially classified documents, regardless of classification level, can be designated eyes only as only viewable by a selected group. Because of this, tons of stuff the government has done or knew is essentially gone as soon as those involved pass away. Sure, there are reports, but if the activity was off-book, or potentially illegal, there isn't a paper trail to follow. So there is a good chance that those at the CIA don't actually know a lot about past events unless they were directly involved. Alternatively, I understand there are many documentaries and books on the supposed book of secrets only the president can access. When the sitting president meets with the president-elect, the book's location is supposedly revealed to him. Who knows the truth behind this? But if it exists, it probably outlines the TLDR version of U.S. history. It's a cult started by a psycho named Al Ron Hubbard on a bet that he could make more money starting a religion than by being an author. They get people to confess all their secrets so that they're rid of their alien ghosts, and they keep recordings of those confessions and use those as leverage. Their adherents have to pay thousands to millions of dollars for classes to get into higher levels of standing. When someone leaves or denigrates their cult, the family members who are in the cult have to shun them. Those who leave also get followed and stalked and harassed. They went after Nicole Kidman and her dad when she left, and her children from her marriage with Tom Cruise refused to speak with her. They have a prison they call the Hole in the middle of the desert in California, in Hemet, and they lock up people there when those people try to run away from the cult. People there are starved and tortured. They have what's called the Sea Org. It's a ship where members send their kids once they become like 12 or something, and those kids are taken out of school and sent to scrub toilets with toothbrushes and stuff like that. They're told they're working to make themselves and the world better, but they're not. It's literally just slave labor. The kids otherwise have no supervision. When a young woman ends up pregnant in the Sea Org, she's forced to either get an abortion or go to the hole. They're told that if they learn about something that's ahead of their level, they'll get sick and die. The last thing in their top level they learn is that they believe that an alien dictator named Xenu created humans by planting slave pens around volcanoes, and threw atomic bombs into the volcanoes. There's a lot more to the history of the cult, but it's incredibly disturbing and disgusting, and, yet, it attracts celebrities like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Kirstie Alley, Giovanni Ribisi, Nancy Cartwright, Elizabeth Moss, etc. Then we tax the ultra-rich mega churches, make it the same as normal income taxes, where low-income or unprivileged churches get tax exemptions or tax credits to pay little to no taxes, but then the ultra-high-class, private jet flying, mega mansion owning, multi-million-dollar yacht-buying churches pay their dues from a religion that claims it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. It's unbelievable how many people are allowed to get mega rich off of completely untaxed and unregulated revenue. Why stop there? All religious entities now have to pay taxes unless their leaders submit to a fixed income on their entire house. If they go over it, they lose their tax exemption status, kinda like how people with disabilities lose their disability payments if they have over $2,000 in their house. So religious person's significant other or children can be their barely hidden safe, and also the fixed income is enough to support them in a family home, 1 or 2 bedroom for childless couple, increased allowance for kids or whatever to allow for a larger home. They also opt onto a retirement plan that allows for them to have the same quality of life should they retire or quit. If they just quit to get a cheap house, then they get the mortgage or have to find new living situation or something. Religions are often awful, but only Congress has the rights to levy taxes, and while even declaring just one organization as no tax-exempt would face judicial challenges, sweeping changes that revoke all religions would probably never stand up in court. You'd need actual tax law changed. Ex post facto is both prohibited at the state and federal level by the Constitution. Declaring even a simple law with retroactive enforcement will never hold up. Advisors that serve at the pleasure of the president. The president is ultimately still the decision maker and can dismiss any member of the cabinet at any time, for any reason. The only thing that differentiates a cabinet position from any other government job is how they are appointed, not the pecking order. There's obvious political ramifications if you fire a cabinet member for not taxing churches, but that's absolutely what could happen, and Canaanite members are literal employees of the U.S. government, under the executive branch, of whom the president is the leader. Saying they aren't employees is kind of nonsensical. The loophole does exist, but so does the cost. I mean, look at Trump. For all the times he broke norms and exploited loopholes, he didn't actually achieve much in reality. Because he was in a constant state of scandal, his admin didn't get much done. Of course they were just ineffective too, but there you go. Compare that to Biden, who is trying to avoid scandal completely in the interest of pursuing an actual agenda. Trump didn't have much of an agenda, but the only real thing he managed to do was the tax cuts. Very interesting. I like that it doesn't prevent people from running for office. That could be very dangerous. I kinda wish that the US would have a similar clause, but also glad that it doesn't, if that makes sense. I've also seen how bad it is to marginalize groups because they don't conform to the rest of society. It's a double-edged sword that I'm very on the fence about. If used properly, it preserves the values of the country. However, it also opens the gates to oppression because of your association to a group that society has deemed less worthy. Skeptical. I don't know much about Scientology either, but you got me curious, so I checked last year's report of the Verfassungsschutz, Agency for the Protection of the Constitution. The closest thing in the US would be the NSA. It's basically because the founder of Scientology has repeatedly stated, in books, that he aims to create a society in which only Scientologists have certain civil rights, such as the right to bear children. And because the Church of Scientology follows their founder's ideals closely, doesn't distance itself from such statements and is a fundamentalist institution in itself, this goal is assumed to be a goal of Scientology as a whole, aiming to strip non-Scientologists of their rights and abolishing democracy is contrary to some of the most central articles of the German Constitution, such as all state power emanates from the people. Therefore, Scientology is deemed unconstitutional and the German state can legally discriminate against members of it by not employing them. Short answer. Yes, it is. Legally, the fact that the organization is being watched by the Verfassungsschutz on federal and some bureaus for Verfassungsschutz on state level does not automatically result in a ban for employment of their members. The Bundesverfassungsschutzbericht 2020, annually report Verfassungsschutz on federal level, argues that the final goal of the organization is to create the perfect human individual, so-called clears. All people that do not belong to this group of clears should be denied their basic human rights. https://www.verfassungsschutz.de/share docs/publication and /2021/Verfassungsschutzbericht 2020 fact and attendance incurs use of Endfassung.html, since we had that already, you know. That one guy who divided the population into worth living and not worth living accidentally starting it's obvious why the Verfassungsschutz is keeping an eye on that organization. What I don't know is if attempts to infiltrate U.S. government agencies during the 70s play a significant role in that decision. See Operation Snow White https://n.m.wiki/operation_snow_white. German wiki article states that they are being monitored since 1997. However, since our constitution also guarantees Vertragsfreiheit, principle of freedom of contract, only of course if you do not violate the law, you can employ members of Scientology here. If you want to, you can also exclude them from your company like most government agencies here in Germany do. By doing so, I guess, you open yourself to a lawsuit. The fact that the written agenda of an organization you are a member of contains elements which go against the Constitution is no proof that you as an individual act upon it. Anti-discrimination lawsuits have been filed, but so far the courts decided in favor of the employers which have those sect filters in place. The stance of the German state, not accepting the Scientology as a religion, but rather viewing it as an abuse of business, had been criticized by the U.S. government. BTW. See https://n.m.wiki/Scientology_Germany. Edit typo. Contact. Greater than contract. Since anthroposophy is more of a movement and not a unified organization, I wouldn't think so. While Scientology has its own chapter in the annual report of the Office for the Protection of the Constitution, I couldn't find any mentions of Steiner, anthroposophy or Waldorf schools in the reports from 2019 and 2020. That doesn't mean that the movement is unproblematic, of course. Waldorf schools and the wider movement have been, rightly, criticized for their handling of pandemic regulations and vaccine education, the often unscientific way in which they teach science, and the links of some teachers to extreme right-wing and conspiracy movements. Source: went to a Steiner school for 13 years. I actually went to a Steiner not exactly Steiner to be clear but close, school. It was fantastic. Most students were quite happy most of the time, and we were one of the best performing schools in the state according to standardized tests. The only issue I ran into was that it was definitely a school for extroverts, and am not extroverted. The main difference was probs in spirituality. There were very few vegans and PPL who believed in essential oil bullshit, etc., and that was reflected in the curriculum. I'm also pretty sure there weren't many religious PPL there. I think it's because when you work for a school you're technically working for the government, hence you have to sign this form saying that you're not affiliated with any Verfassungsfeindlichen organizations. I had to sign something similar when I became a working student employed by my university. Presumably the above-mentioned PhD program is one where, while working on the PhD, they're also employed at some chair, and since the university is also run by the government, they're technically a public employee, which is why they have to sign the form. I've had actual dreams where I was the president but have no clue how I got there. And now everyone was relying on me to lead the country and give some big speech on a topic I know nothing about. In one dream I ended up being chased by international assassins, so Secret Service was taking me around to all these back allies to avoid them. Even then there was pressure to get back to the podium to deliver a much delayed speech that I still knew nothing about. I don't really know how powerful the president is, as I'm not American, but to my lack of knowledge of democratic countries you won't be able to do any of it without Congress approval, and even if you can it would take time to prepare and put it on motion, and if you could do it really fast and effortless, most likely the next guy would be able to reverse it the same way. I would rather resting and let a better prepared and more motivated person take the role. Also, even more importantly, resign and let someone who is more qualified for the job, hopefully the vice president is, take over. Light, as great and idealistic as the concept of everyone can become president is, Trump seems like a good indicator that some political experience might be a good idea as well. I mean, with most other fields most people would instantly agree that those promoted to be in charge should know what they are doing, right? All the good you could do and you choose to do nothing. Wow, I guess it is better than many that have actively sought to do harm for personal profit. I would propose a constitutional amendment for the popular vote and for campaign finance reform. Put a flat tax of 25% on corporations with no exemptions or tax havens allowed, and would enforce it with heavy jail time for the CEO if they are found guilty of avoiding taxes. A wealth tax on total assets of 10% every year for any person with over $1 billion. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour / $31,200 a year and tie it to the new maximum that is 300 times whatever minimum wage is, just under $10 million a year if minimum wage is $15 an hour. Set all congressional salaries to 6 times minimum wage, so if they want a raise they have to give one to everyone. Eliminate salaries so everyone gets paid for every single hour they work. Those who are saying quit or variations on that are probably the ones that would do quite well at the job. I'd probably just launch nukes at people who pissed me off. I definitely shouldn't be allowed to have that kind of power, although having a predator drone follow me around so I can call an airstrike on anyone who drives badly would be very handy. Nah, actually it isn't. He has a lot of debt too. Just that it isn't accrued to him as person but to various companies and stooges he has around, but it can be traced back to him, if the offices would actually care to do so. Once you take the debt out you would be surprised how his net worth has shrunk. He is not an honest business, he never was, he always tried to avoid laws as much as any rich businessman. Honest billionaire is an imaginary construct. Nobody got to be a billionaire by being honest and law-abiding. If he tried it like that he would have gotten trampled over by competition very quickly. Since it is an executive order, it can and probably would be undone by the next president by executive order. The best thing to do is refuse to do anything, just enjoy living in the White House rent-free and do what you want. Refuse to do anything, and I mean anything. We can't force you to do anything. You are the president. Don't even run for re-election. Enjoy 4 years of no action taken and then enjoy your pension. 4. Cry as in an effort to stop the upset population. The next president immediately revokes that TO or it gets shot down by the Supreme Court. 5. Go down as the most controversial and least consequential president. 6. Write a book and do some TV appearances becoming a multimillionaire. Sign executive order that presidents who resign from office get to X the pension. Resign effective immediately. Kick back, relax, watch yourself go down in history as the less consequential president ever. Label Orange Baby Man a terrorist and send him far, far away forever. Then his kids, then anyone else who supports him. All terrorists. Then I would label the KKK, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, all domestic terrorists organizations. I would seize all of their assets collectively and take all that money and first give it to all the ethnic groups that have been abused by them. Next, I would give a chunk to infrastructure and the rest to pay off student debt. Those who are saying quit or variations on that are probably the ones that would do quite well at the job. I'd probably just launch nukes at people who pissed me off. I definitely shouldn't be allowed to have that kind of power, although having a predator drone follow me around so I can call an airstrike on anyone who drives badly would be very handy.